Debra Shushan joins us now in the studio. She's the Director of Policy and Government Relations at Americans for Peace now. So what happens if neither Netanyahu or Gantz can pull a majority? What are the possible outcomes here?
Well, there are a number of possible outcomes, of course, and we've got weeks to go before any of this will be determined. The first thing that needs to happen is that President Reuven Rivlin will have to give the opportunity to try to form a government to either Netanyahu or to Benny Gantz, and then that man will have 28 days in order to try to make the government coalition come together. If that doesn't happen, there can be an extension. It can go at that point to another person. It can go back to the president who can give it to someone else. Ultimately, if there's still deadlock, there's a possibility of yet another, a third round of elections. But President Rivlin has made pretty clear that he doesn't want that to happen. He wants a government to be formed this time. And so what we're going to see is a lot of horse trading in the process. You heard in that report about Avigdor Lieberman and the crucial role that he plays in terms of giving either of these two men, Gantz or Netanyahu, the 61 plus seats that he needs to have a government.
You and I spoke 5 months ago, last time there was an election.
We did.
What has changed since then? Where's the shift and why are they in the situation they're in now?
Well, the reason we're in this situation is because Netanyahu was not able to form a government, and rather than give the mandate back to President Rivlin, who could have given it to Gantz, he decided to pull a parliamentary maneuver where he basically had Knesset vote for a second round of elections. So that's where we got to where we are. Netanyahu has made this process entirely about him. He's trying to hold on to the prime ministership with everything he's got. That's vital for him because he's also trying to fight off corruption allegations, the possibility of indictment and going to jail, and remaining prime minister is really key to all that. In terms of what's changed, the Likud party has suffered a very serious setback under Netanyahu. They lost a serious number of seats, especially when you consider that they had merged with another party, a small party that led by Moshe Kahlon. And so when you consider that they'd come together and still lost a serious amount of seats, that's a big change. Netanyahu is weaker than he's ever been in his political career. Another really interesting and important change that's happened is with the joint list. Those are the Arab party, 4 small Arab parties who have come together to form this joint list. And they've improved their position very significantly from the result that they had back in April. It now looks like they're coming in at about 13 seats, whereas previously they had 10. So that's a really significant improvement, and that comes down to the fact that the turnout among the Palestinian citizens of Israel rose to about 60%, up from less than 50%. And a key part of that has to do with the way that Netanyahu treated that population and the incitement that he tried to use as a way to leverage his population and get them to come to the polls. And ultimately, it looks like it backfired on him at the polls, and it wasn't particularly good for Israeli democracy in the process.
And we got word today that Netanyahu will not be traveling to New York next week for the United Nations General Assembly. How significant is that move?
It's a big deal. For Netanyahu, I think it's fair to say that the annual meeting of the United Nations General Assembly that happens every fall is his happy place.
He's also going to meet Trump next week.
Right. And, you know, one of the things that's so interesting is that Trump appears to have finally thrown his very good friend Bibi Netanyahu under the bus. He was asked today whether he had placed a call to Netanyahu, and he said he had not. He said our relations are with Israel rather than with any single leader. Very different tone from Trump than what we'd seen before vis-a-vis this relationship. If there's anything that Trump doesn't want to be associated with, it's a loser. And that's what Netanyahu appears to be. So he won't be coming to New York. He won't be meeting with Trump. And we won't have the opportunity to see one of his fantastic visual aids presented, his famous visual aids during his UN speech. He won't be here. Instead, he'll be sending Israel's foreign minister, Israel Katz, who will have the opportunity to shine as possibly a potential rival to Netanyahu.
In the meantime, a lot of jockeying back home
Absolutely.
for position. We'll have to see what the next few weeks brings. Debra Shushan, thank you so much.
My pleasure.